Welcome back to Night Search. I'm Eddie Middleton, and I'm talking with Laura Knight. And folks, she has a website that has some really profound food for thought. Laura, let's give out your website address again, if you don't mind.
It's www.cassiopeia.org, and you spell that Cassiopeia.
And how did you arrive at the name for your website?
Well,
that's a long story in itself. We only got 30 minutes, but I think that'll start to lead us into the discussion about the matrix.
Well, as I said, I had been doing all of these strange researches for all of these years, and among the many things I researched was the channeling phenomenon. And
that's been a very controversial subject, I know.
It's extremely controversial because of the fact that because of my experience with spirit release and my experience with exorcism, I recognized that most channeling, I'm not going to say if not all, but I'm just going to say most channeling is an interaction with an entity that probably is very much like the shepherd who takes care of the sheep.
Yeah, and deceives many people.
Right.
Thinking they got one of the super intelligent, benevolent space brothers helping them out and communicating through them because they're such a special, chosen person.
Exactly, and you can always tell because they usually change their name or they are in touch with some kind of galactic hierarchy or guardians or
And we've all heard of the Ashtar command.
Yeah, the whole 9 yards. And the thing was that in the course of my researches, now I didn't just research channeling in the last 20 years, which is quite a lot of material itself, but I researched it back into the previous centuries and even further back because I wanted every detail. People who know me know that I'm kind of a bulldog this way. By the way, hi Andy, Scott, and Monty. And Arlo.
Yeah, you got interested in channeling because you saw this deception going on.
Right, so...
That's so interesting that you don't just start right out thinking channeling is a good thing. You're highly suspicious of it and you want to check it out.
I'm suspicious of everything, and I always ask, says who? Somebody said, well, says who? So I decided to see if I couldn't think about this in a logical, theoretical way and devise some way or means or theory by which channeling could possibly really take place, because the first thing I understood was most channeling comes from dead dudes. Dead dudes, they have certain advantages because they're not constrained by time. But they also don't know a whole hell of a lot more than we do. Edgar Casey always said that a dead Presbyterian is just that, a dead Presbyterian. So, anyway, to make a long story short, it's really pretty much laid out on the website. I devised a way and means and persisted at it because I knew that if you start to interact with the first entities that come along, you're going to be deceived. The second entities, because you have to refine and build and you have to test and try these spirits, and I don't mean by challenging them in the name of Jesus. I mean by understanding the line of force that runs through what they are saying and doing. That's the important thing. What is the line of force? So, over a period of several years with other people, we engaged in this channeling experiment using multiple receivers, because another thing I figured out about the whole thing was that a single human being in an ordinary state of existence simply could not receive the energies of a truly higher being.
In other words, you didn't feel like you were in any danger with this experiment of being possessed by some demonic entity?
Well, certainly I thought about the danger, but I also had a lot of experience with spirit release and exorcism, and I had techniques to make sure that spiritual hygiene was maintained at a level that most people don't even comprehend.
Now, I've heard of the raw transmissions. Isn't that considered like from the highest source?
It had some real good bleed-throughs of real good high-level information. I really respect that source. I do point out, however, that it had some problems, and obviously there was some bias on the part of the receivers, and you can always detect bias in the language. You know, when there's a lot of words spoken with very little meat, what we call word density, you know, value density of the words. I mean, do they use a lot of words and say nothing or very little? I mean,
yeah, I've said it on a few channeling sessions, and there's just all a bunch of words that didn't really say anything, as far as I'm concerned.
It's psychobabble.
Yeah.
So word density is one clue. Archaic language. They all think that they have to talk in the language of the Bible, or that they have to use, you know, convoluted, twisted words.
Right.
And part of my theory was that a higher being, you know, has already done these things. I mean, you know, saying, well, they can't say anything or know anything that's not in the mind of the channel, or this or that. You know, all of these excuses that are given as to why these channeled entities are such ignoramuses, you know, just don't cut the mustard with me. And I just decided if it's a truly higher being, it's like somebody who already knows the ABCs, and they already know how to read Shakespeare, so it's just as easy for them to go back and say the ABCs. I mean, they didn't stop knowing how to say the ABCs just because they know Shakespeare.
Yeah.
So all of these excuses were kind of, you know, not a consideration in my mind. They had to have high word density, and they had to have a certain value, a certain line of force, and that was objective truth. Are they telling the truth? And that was actually where I got into kind of a little bit of a quandary, because when our channeling experiment finally on the night of the first comet impacts of Shoemaker-Levy on Jupiter, actually is when it happened. They first came through this particular source that called itself transmitting from Cassiopeia. They're not aliens. They're not any kind of physical beings. It calls itself, you know, kind of a cosmic intelligence, ourselves in the future, you know, like many, 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 many thousands of years in the future, so to speak. Yeah. And what they told us was truth. But it upset me so much when they were telling us this truth that the project almost ended right there and then. I had to sit down and have a long talk with myself, and I said to myself, Self, you wanted the truth. They're telling the truth. You know it's the truth because you have read it in other places. Why would you think that a higher being would not tell you the truth?
Now, how did you, or how were you able to judge that it was the truth?
Well, if there is a lot of similar information coming out of people's heads under hypnosis, and other information that is coming from other researchers about the certain matters that they were telling us about, you begin to get the idea that it's probably the truth. It's like sitting on the side of the road. If you're sitting on the side of the road and there's a bend in the road up ahead and 100 people walk past you and every one of them says that just around the bend there's a river with a bridge over it, you come to the idea that there's probably really a bridge with a, you know, a river with a bridge over it.
Okay.
So when people start telling you that there are aliens who are performing experiments on human beings that are pretty horrifying, and then you have a channel source that says, yeah, that's happening, and here are some of the details. Instead of saying, oh, no, we're all here to help you. It's all no, pay no attention to that man behind the curtain. I am the great and powerful Oz. I'm going to help you.
Yeah.
But no, they weren't doing that. They did not want to lie to me. I asked a question. They answered. What they answered was something truly horrifying. But it was the truth.
Could you share that with us?
They told us about experiments being performed on human beings in underground bases, some of them that included stress testing the bodies of young children. Just like you put a car on the rack and stress test it to see, you know, if the joints will hold or the ligaments will hold.
Yeah.
And you can use your imagination on how that's done.
Oh, yeah. So they were sharing some just really hardcore, frightening kind of information about an alien agenda going on the planet right now.
Well, they only did it in response to my questions. I asked the questions, and they answered the questions. Cold truth. And I thought, oh, gee, and of course there were some people in the room, oh, a higher level being wouldn't say that, you know, and they just, you know, practically ran for the door. And then, and I was upset myself because it's, you know, I mean, you want emotionally to have a warm, fuzzy lie to believe in. You want to be told some way, somehow, that there's something that, some way you can excuse this. You don't want to feel like a fish in a fishbowl, you know, where you can't anything outside of the fishbowl because it's all distorted, but you know that there's something out there that can see everything about you and watches every move you make.
Yeah. Now, these beings from Cassiopeia, what level of density would they reside at, do you think?
They describe themselves as 6-level density beings from the level of what you call unified thought forms knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. I mean, it's just knowledge. It's of course.
Now, the Ra beings, they were claimed to be like at that level also, right?
Yes, and I believe they were. What part of it managed to bleed through the bias, but you notice when you read Ra that, and I respect it very much, but you notice the convoluted language, but there is very often an excessive amount of words with not a whole lot being said. On other occasions, there is very meaty material, very meaty, and it was on those occasions when I